We're live.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first and hope the many of the RAW SMACKDOwn Breakdown show here on the Combat Wrestling Network. I am your host, Adonis Nazario, and today I'm joined by one of the best people I know, Nico Suave Regoli. How you doing today, Nico?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here on the first episode of the show, the Raw and SmackDown Breakdown, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to break down Raw and SmackDown bit by bit and just cover everything that happened. We're out of Fastlane. We're on the road to WrestleMania officially now.
Officially.
Yes, officially. No more building two cards at once. We can just focus on Mania, and that's a good thing.
It's definitely a good thing. I just want to let all the fans out there know and all of the subscribers to the channel that I personally am a very casual fan of wrestling. I have an opinion that may differ from some of the hardcore fans' opinions, and that's the beautiful thing about the world. Everybody has their different opinions. Everybody has their different outlooks. I just hope you come and enjoy the show. And Nico, as far as Raw goes, we're going to start with Raw. What was your highlight of the evening?
So this might just be because of personal reasons, but for me, the highlight, and also at the same time, the low light for me was Kurt Angle announcing his retirement. And I'll explain why it's both a highlight and a low light. The reason why it's a highlight is because I'm from Pittsburgh. Kurt Angle is a legend in this area of Pennsylvania. He's a legend worldwide, but mostly here in the city of Black and Gold. And, you know, he's had a great 20-year career in the business of professional wrestling, multiple-time WWE champion, multiple-time TNA champion. I think he was even the IWGP champion for a little bit. He's made his mark pretty much everywhere in wrestling. He's cemented himself in the business's history. And to have him announce that he's going out on his own terms, as opposed to being forced out, that's a good thing in my eyes. Why this is also a low light is because, again, this was in Pittsburgh. He had his final match in Pittsburgh against Apollo Crews, and I'm on my damn couch and not in the arena to see it happen live. So, like, that was my last chance to see Kurt Angle compete in the ring, and I unfortunately missed it. I'm glad that I get to watch him compete one more time on TV in terms of Mania. But, yeah, I'm upset that I missed my last opportunity to see him compete live.
Well, I'm not from Pittsburgh, but it's bittersweet, like you say. A big part of why I got back into wrestling during the Attitude Era was because I followed the Olympics. You know as well as anybody else that I'm a very big MMA fan, and part of MMA is Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling. And I take the time to watch those things just because I want to see those upper echelon guys who are rumored to step into MMA, where they come from. I like to see their base. And for a man to win an Olympic gold medal with a broken neck.
Broken freaking neck.
It is I can't even put into words what that means. So I'm glad to see that he had a storied career, He had his trials and tribulations just like anybody else, but like you said, I'm glad to see that he's taking the time to do it on his own terms. Nobody's forcing him out. He's not going to be the 60-year-old guy who can barely lift his arms in the indies, trying to get a check. So more than happy for Kurt Angle, and I will be there watching at WrestleMania to send them all. On another note, another announcement made, and it was Triple H and Batista in a no-holds-barred match. Batista finally making showing his face on live TV, not dragging poor Ric Flair unconscious out of a dressing room. I don't know how I feel about this. A piece of me is glad to see that the WWE and Triple H are willing to let bygones be bygones, because we all know Batista didn't leave the last time on best terms. But do we want to see Batista again? I don't know. What are your feelings about it?
Well, for me, here's the thing. Batista, I think there's a lot of truth to that promo he gave us on Monday, which is he feels like when he came back during WrestleMania 30 season, a lot of things did not go the way he had hoped they would. He wanted to come in as a heel, and because he understood how popular Daniel Bryan and CM Punk were at the time. And instead, Triple H was like, "No, they'll love you. They'll love it when you come back." But Batista knew better, and now we're seeing in this promo on Monday a lot of what Batista said was true. Like, Triple H has undermined and underestimated Batista at a lot of times, and not just in character, but in real life. Batista, he has become the actor that The Rock wishes he could be. The Rock is a superstar in Hollywood, but Batista, he's become an actor. And it's showing that he's very passionate about his craft and everything he does now on TV. And he wants to show one last time in the wrestling world, hey, I still got it. Here's what I can do. This is the match that I want to end my career on before I go and pursue acting as a full-time thing. And Triple H, Triple H is the interesting factor here, because the way wrestling works is usually the guy who's leaving is supposed to go out with the loss, because that's just been tradition. But Triple H has not had the best record at Mania lately. He's been the guy who's been putting other people over. So I'm wondering, will he put Batista over and give him that rub one last time? Or because of old school booking, will Batista be the one looking up at the lights on the count of 1, 2, 3?
Honestly, I would hope that Batista gets put over, but I can see Triple H kind of squashing those dreams. I could honestly see it. Like you said, Triple H hasn't had the best record at Mania as of late. And I don't see, it's kind of hard because I can also see Triple H putting Batista over kind of as an apology for, like you said, WrestleMania 30 season, and trying to give Batista that high note to go out on, especially if it's the same night that Angle's going to retire. You kind of want to send out those two legends on the highest of notes. Triple H always has next year. Triple H can work in Angles with somebody else next year, and if Triple H wants to be done after next year, he can go out on top. But I think for the sake of character, for the sake of fan service, let Batista catch that win one last time.
I'm cool with that.
Moving over to what I find to be a little disheartening as a fan, as somebody who has come back into wrestling, I've been drawn to Finn Balor, and through my ignorance, I didn't know who Finn Balor was. Like, I would see people with Bullet Club shirts, and I was like, what is this? And then through the greatness of the internet, I started doing some research, and I'm a big fan of Finn Balor, and I'm not the only one. There are millions of people around the world that the minute that boy steps out of a curtain, everyone loses their mind. He's a great performer. He's over as hell with the fans, and yet for some reason they cannot get it right with Finn Balor. He won the title at Chamber by not pinning Lashley, by pinning Lio Rush. Then they bury the character in the mid card in these triple threat, these 3-man tags. No sign of the belt, no storyline, and then they bury him at Fastlane. They come back and they squash him with Bobby Lashley. It's disheartening because at what point if I'm a person who's paying for a ticket, I'm not paying to watch Bobby Lashley win. I'm paying to see the people I cheer for either come out on top or be put in a storyline in which you see the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think they know what to do with Finn Balor at this point, in my opinion.
See, if not for something I had heard yesterday, I would agree with you. But here's what I heard yesterday, and you mentioned this. You just mentioned this at Chamber. Who did Balor pin to actually win the IC title? It wasn't Lashley who was the champion. It was Lio Rush. Lio Rush had a hand in interfering with the match that happened on Monday that caused Lashley to win the title back from Balor. So we're getting close to Mania now. And the story is that Finn, although he won the IC title, he didn't officially beat the champion for the title. So with Mania coming up, it might be the perfect time to bring out the return of the Demon persona.
This might be true. Might be true. And you know what? That would make great entertainment, I believe. You get the Demon to come out. He finally gets a clean 1, 2, 3 on Bobby Lashley. Get the pop.
And think about it. I don't think we've seen the Demon persona appear at WrestleMania yet. We've seen it at SummerSlam, but I don't think we've seen it at Mania yet.
Yeah, I believe so. I think you're right. Yeah, he has never appeared on WrestleMania as the Demon. It was only at SummerSlam against Rollins.
And several years later at SummerSlam against Corbin, which was completely out of the blue. But this is a match that I think calls for the Demon to make its appearance because it's been about 6 to 9 months. It's been a while since we've even thought about the Demon. Mm-hmm. So and now when we least expect it, that's a WrestleMania moment that makes sense. That's a swerve that makes sense that we can all get behind, is for the Demon to make its first appearance in almost a year at the grandest stage of them all for the belt that has last year it finally main evented a pay-per-view for the first time in about a decade. So the Intercontinental Championship, it has importance again. And that makes the Demon coming out to fight for it and win it even that much more significant.
True. This is true. In my opinion, where do you go with, all right, in a perfect world, and I'm sure we could touch on this later on in a WrestleMania post-fight, but in a perfect world, after Finn wins that title at Mania, where do you go with him from there? Do you do a good solid IC run, or do you use that IC belt to propel him into Universal Championship matches?
So this is in the back of my head as you ask me this question. The Superstar Shakeup, the next Superstar Shakeup, is supposed to take place after Mania. So
2 weeks, right?
Yeah. So Finn could very well end up on SmackDown, where they have a good track record of making sure that every star, whether it be mid-card, main event scene, or even jobber status, is used efficiently, because they only have 2 hours to use these people, so they make sure that they make every minute count for those characters. The other thing that's in my head, though, is also that SmackDown is moving to Fox in the fall. And there have been rumors back and forth of whether or not they're going to keep the brand split a thing, or if the brand split is going to end. So, like, that makes me wonder, like, even if they move Finn Balor to SmackDown, is anything going to change? Because what happens if he ends up, if the brand split ends, he's going to end up fighting the same people over and over again, and not in the way that's good that SmackDown has made work. That's the weird thing, is Raw and SmackDown do a lot of the same things, but SmackDown knows how to make those things work, whereas Raw is a little more. They don't have they slip on banana peels more often when doing the same things that SmackDown does.
This is true.
But I feel like Finn's best chance to really make an Intercontinental Championship reign count is move that title and him to SmackDown. And then when they're finally ready to have him give up the title, there's the WWE Championship with a lot of great people for him to wrestle for. You got AJ Styles, Randy Orton. You got the current champ Daniel Bryan. You got the potential future champ Kofi Kingston. Got the other members of the New Day, Shinsuke Nakamura if he still sticks around, Rusev if he still sticks around, the Hardys, Aleister Black and Ricochet are there now. What brand they end up on is floating. They're still floating, but I feel like they'd be well used on SmackDown as well. But like I feel like Finn's best chance to make the Intercontinental Championship work is move him to SmackDown.
This is true. This is true. All right, moving on. The Shield. That debacle.
So this goes all the way back to the main reason that I understand as to why Dean Ambrose is leaving. Like he just said, "Fuck it, I'm done," is because, and this is coming from Ryback and his podcast. So forgive me if this is way wrong, and Ryback is just reading into too many things. But according to him, Dean Ambrose was not happy with his recent heel run. He's not happy with the timing that the heel run took place, and he's not happy with the reaction that it got. And the writing was on the wall because, like, the moment he got the Intercontinental Championship off of Seth Rollins, the match itself for the title fell flat, and his reign with the title also fell flat. It was just it didn't feel like he wanted to be heel at the time, and it showed, and that's why it didn't work. So then he ends up like, I don't want to do this. You made me make fun of my best friend in the world's cancer for a cheap heel pop, and now we're at this point where heel heat, and I want to go elsewhere. I want to try other things, and so thankfully at Fastlane, the Shield went off on the best possible note they could have. That match was phenomenal. It was like it reminded me a lot of Bohemian Rhapsody, where they're giving the life. I'm forgetting the name of the concert, but that final
I know
concert.
What you're talking about. What was the name of the concert? It's gonna.
We're gonna remember.
Aid for Life, or Life Aid, Life Aid.
Life Aid, yes, the Life Aid concert. It reminded me of the Life Aid concert at the end of Bohemian Rhapsody, because we got the Shield's best hits, and it was crowd service in the best way possible. And then they start off Raw this week with like, okay, this is our final goodbye, and it's time for us to move on to other things. Seth's got Brock coming up. Roman's got his first match post remission coming up, and Dean, he's ready to move on to other things. And when they announced Reigns versus Corbin, I was both happy and annoyed, because I was happy because that match was not going to take place on Mania. No one wants to see Corbin at Mania. He sucks the life out of a room. But I was also disappointed because that meant, we're going to have to watch Corbin compete on Raw right now. And then they swerve us. They have Drew McIntyre come out and beat the living holy hell out of Roman's brain to the point that he can't compete. And I like that they did this because if you understand, sometimes even the best cancer recoveries, there's still a little bit of weakness in you from following those recoveries. So he's not as strong right now, at least, as he was before the cancer came into play. So it makes sense for those few blows to the head to do as much damage as they did. And also, he hit his head off a metal post, so it's also reasonable for him to have that reaction. And they take him backstage. They put him in the trainer's office to get fixed up. And Dean Ambrose, that's the Dean Ambrose that people love to see. The one that's like passionate and wants to just beat the living holy hell out of someone for crossing him in the wrong way. And falls count anywhere. I love me a good falls count anywhere match. And Dean went for it, and Drew went for it as well. This was a match I liked, and hearing Renee on commentary, it felt like there was a lot of real life shock of watching her husband take the beating that he did, and that added to the feeling of the match. It added to the. This is a shoot. Here, talk while the phone rings.
Well, my opinion on the match was simple. It was a great match. It was very exciting. Nico touched on a point with having Renee at the table doing announcing. It gave that extra layer of suspense. It also gave that extra layer of drama. And it made you invested because you knew she was invested. So, my hat's off to both gentlemen who performed. It was a great match. And I look forward to seeing what they're going to do, not only with the remaining members of the Shield, but where they're going to go with Drew McIntyre as well. I think he's a very underutilized talent, and I think that he brings a sense of viciousness to his matches.
And I think what they're going to do is, I think it's going to be Roman versus Drew at Mania. And the crowd is going to be heavily invested in this match. They're going to be cheering for Roman like crazy. They're going to be booing Drew like crazy.
Yes.
The little things matter in the big scheme of things, and the little details just made this one of the big matches to see for Mania. It's not officially announced yet for the Mania card, but I have a feeling it will be. And when it does, the crowd will be incredibly invested in it.
Where do you think they place it? Upper mid card or?
Knowing Vince, I have a feeling it's going to be scheduled to be like early to mid card, but it'll somehow end up being one of the matches in between the main events, just because people might need a break, but they'll need a break that they'll still want to be invested in.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mania is hard to predict in terms of like what matches will go on first and last, simply because it's 7 hours long in total, and so like you're kind of operating on a reactionary basis, depending on like how tired is the crowd. Do we need to make a last minute change? Should we bench these guys for another hour or so and let these guys go on instead?
Yeah, this is true. And the next order of business on Raw. Now, Nico, you know how I feel about this person. You've heard me go on rants. You've heard me lose my mind over this woman. And it's not going to be that this time. This is going to be me totally going the opposite. I'm a fan of Ronda Rousey being nasty. You know how I felt. I felt like she couldn't cut a promo to save her life. I felt, her acting was trash, to say the least. And it has nothing to do with her in-ring work. It always had to do with her character development and almost how cheesy I felt like she was trying to deliver things. This is the first time where I feel like the angry Ronda Rousey, that woman that I think she's carrying over a little bit of that anger that she had when she left the UFC, of how she was portrayed in the media and treated. I finally think that, even though it may be a work shoot, I think we're finally getting the Rousey. And but she's not Yahee. She's bad Biatch who was going to kick the shit out of you. And it's refreshing to see that they're finally, if you want to call her the baddest woman on the planet, let her act like the baddest woman on the planet. Not like, a generic hero. Because that's not what she is. She was never like that in the UFC or Strikeforce. If you listen to the way she cut promos during press conferences, she would say things like, I'm here to retire undefeated, and I'm going to break her arm, or I'm going to break her face, or I'm going to punish her. That's how she used to carry herself. It's refreshing to see her carry herself like this now. Unfortunately, it took the whole world turning on her again for us to get that. but it's refreshing.
You're not wrong in your assessment. You're definitely not wrong in your assessment. Ronda, and we've seen this with a lot of people in the past, that when they're told to act a certain way that doesn't fit who they naturally are, the crowd can tell. Like, we knew Roman wasn't a white meat babyface. He had a personality inside there, and WWE never let him show that personality until after he won the belt at Mania. And then it started to come out, and people started to get behind him more and more. And then finally, we've seen we've seen him at his realest over the past few months. Same can be said for guys like even his cousin The Rock. When The Rock debuted, like, we could tell that wasn't Dwayne Johnson, the real person we were seeing. When The Rock got that microphone in his hand and was allowed to just be himself, it showed, and the crowd really got behind him. And now with Ronda, her problem is she's always been sort of tone deaf to how she comes across. So she might have thought she was the hero in the situation, when really she's always kind of been villainous. Not the full villain, but she has been she has been villainous at times. And she finally got to let loose. I'm definitely, when her own hometown of Los Angeles booed her, it affected her in a way. And then the crowd chanting "You deserve it" at Survivor Series, when Charlotte was beating her over the head with a stick, that's got to her too. And she had just been holding this back inside of her for the longest time. And now when she realizes, okay, Becky is really over as the face of this Charlotte, she works better as a heel. But I'm the badass. I'm the person who actually was a real fighter, who actually won real fights and won real titles in those real fights. So I'm just gonna show that, like, here's my disdain for the way wrestling thinking works sometimes. I'm going to vocalize it, and I'm just going to beat the ever-loving crap out of anyone who gets in my way. Unfortunately, that person was Dana Brooke.
Cannon fodder.
And by the way, I wanted to get behind Dana Brooke as she gave this promo. And TV time matters. And I think it showed in the case of this, because she hadn't been on TV for quite a while. And then she comes out all of a sudden. I heard people in the crowd chanting, "Who are you? Who are you?" which hurt me, because, like, I know who she is. And I want to be invested in this promo more than I am, because I have a feeling what she's saying is coming from the heart. Granted, it's a scripted version that's meant to prop up WWE, and she's essentially as a surrogate WWE fan. Yes. In her position in this promo. But there's a lot of truth to what she said. Like, she has to fight to just get on TV. She probably had to fight to get that opportunity, just to get the living crap beaten out of her by Ronda Rousey for those 5 minutes. Yep. And unfortunately, because of the fact that she didn't have that exposure, the segment, at least in my eyes, might have fell a little bit flat. At least her portion of the segment fell a little bit flatter than it probably should have.
I've had the opportunity to go back on the WWE network and watch things like Round and some of those older reality documentaries they have. And Dana Brooke, let me correct myself. That woman, Dana Brooke, she may not be the best at cutting a promo, but I don't see many people working as hard as she does. She works very, very hard at her craft. And I've seen some other YouTube channels say she can't wrestle. Some people have been low in saying that she's ugly. In my opinion, she's not an ugly lady. She carries herself and works as hard, if not harder, than 90% of that roster, men included. I've seen her workout routine, and she does it twice a day. She's super athletic. Everything I've seen her do recently has been very clean, especially in her Rumble matches. So, does she deserve a major push? maybe not until she gets the promo thing down. But I believe that hard work should be rewarded, and all because you're good with a mic doesn't mean you're good in the ring. And not for nothing, they're pushing a lot of pretty people who can't wrestle worth a shit.
And to piggyback off of something you said, Dana Brooke, her work was showing at her best when she was in NXT back when Asuka was the champion. Like
Yes.
she was putting the work in at the Performance Center every day and getting better and better and better, and it showed and it showed. And the thing that happened was she got called up a little bit too soon because of her association with Emma. They thought it was time to bring Emma back to the main roster. And this was when Emma was doing her Miami Vice sunglasses tough girl shtick that was working. It was working. And unfortunately, Emma just got injured. And so then they had Dana Brooke as Charlotte's sidekick when she made the heel turn. And Dana, unfortunately, did not get used in the way she got lost in the shuffle. She did not get used the way she should have. And her career has just never been the same since, which just goes to show that you got to listen to Triple H, Vince. You got to listen to your son-in-law when he says, let me formulate a 6-month plan for these people before you bring them up, because those 6-month plans work to make sure that that the superstars get they have a smooth transition from developmental to main. And when they don't have something going for them, they at least know how to carry themselves to keep themselves relevant. And unfortunately, she didn't really get that experience.
Yes. And when they stuck her with Titus Worldwide, let's be honest, Titus O'Neil never really had the push, nor did he have the fans backing that would expect when you put in a stable. You know, like, I don't know. I just think there's a lot more that they could do with her. Maybe stick her in a tag team with somebody of equal relevance, but who has skills and who has definite mic skills. So that way they can carry the heavier lifting when it comes to promos. Because as of right now, it looks like they're trying to build a tag team division that's non-existent.
Well, technically it does exist because there are titles. There are titles.
Yes, but what I mean by that is this. How many pure tag teams do you know right now? You have the Iconics, you have Fire and Desire, and that's it. Everybody else is generically put together. It's Nia Jackson, Tamina, you could kind of call them a tag team because they clicked up and they stick together, right? But they're sloppy as hell. The Boston Hug Connection, I know a lot of they're over with a lot of fans.
They're the champs. They're the champs, by the way.
Champs. But in my opinion, I don't believe it, because for the last 4.5 years, I've watched them go back and forth where one of them, you know, Sasha Banks is always stabbing Bayley in the back. Now I'm supposed to believe that they're best friends again. I get it, you know, it's storyline or whatever, but I you know, the little in me remembers the day when you had real tag teams. Demolition, the Hart Foundation, the Rockers, Legion of Doom. You had, you know, real teams that they came out, they were dressed alike, they stuck together. That's what they did. This is, it kind of feels like you're forcing it on us. And if you're going to do that, that's fine. But at least have real tag teams in there, so that way there's something for us to gravitate to. So I know that, okay, Boston Hugger Connection, great. They're the tag team champions, great. Who's the next tag team that's coming after them? Give us a real tag team like the Iconics or Fire and Desire. Instead of doing the man, well, we'll get to that in the SmackDown Live portion. But
here's what I'll say to that. I feel like it's not forced. I feel like there is a genuine women's tag division forming here. It's just a matter of the real teams that you're asking, where are they? They're down in NXT right now. And right now, I think the struggle is they're trying to figure out, how do we work around having this title that's not just dual branded, but tri-branded, that's or technically quadruple branded if you count UK. So like they're trying to figure out, how do we make sure continuity fits when we have Sasha and Bayley going from place to place to place. And I think the first glimpse we're going to see of that, again, thank you, Ryan Satin, for putting this thought in my head. He thinks, and now I think, that they might have Sasha and Bayley take on the Sky Pirates at NXT TakeOver New York the night and then on Mania, they'll have the four-way that they're supposedly teasing with Boss and Hug, Nia and Tamina, Beth and Natalia, and the Iconics, because the Iconics, they're doing a good job of, like, in just these minute-long promos, keeping themselves relevant in the tag division, saying, hey, we're the realest tag team around here. Where are you? You said you were going to defend these everywhere. You haven't showed up to Brand Blue yet. We're waiting. Iconic!
Those two crack me up, man. I don't know what it is. I laugh my ass off every time, especially Billy Kay. Billy Kay, man, I can't help. I laugh my ass off every time that something comes out of that girl's mouth. Is comedy gold to me. It's ridiculous. All right, well, that's pretty much Raw. Moving on to the Blue Brand, SmackDown Live. What was your overall assessment of SmackDown Live, my friend?
I rarely ever have a bad thing to say about SmackDown Live, and I'm not going to have a bad thing to say about this one either. Every match was well paced. Everyone got moments to shine in this match. Story development is going really well, and you know, for me, the highlight of the night would have to be and I love Kofi. But for me, the highlight of the night would have to be the back and forth between Randy Orton and AJ Styles, because they laid out every bit of groundwork that all the history between these two, from when their paths never crossed to all the way to now. Like, because like Randy does have a gripe to be made. He and John Cena were essentially at one point in time, they were the ones building SmackDown, and now here comes AJ, who he also has some truth in when he says SmackDown Live is the house that AJ Styles built, because it was never really referred to as SmackDown Live when Randy Orton was first busting his chops on the main roster. It was just SmackDown, and it was Tuesday night SmackDown, Friday night SmackDown, Thursday night SmackDown. They moved it around a lot. Now, as it's SmackDown Live, AJ Styles has made it his brand, and that bothers Randy. And you know, we've only seen this match, I think, once before, and that was when Bray was the champion, and they were doing that infighting with the Wyatt family, where Randy he won the Royal Rumble, but gave up his opportunity, then took it back, and then they had to figure out who's going to face Bray for the title at Mania, and it ended up being Randy, and they put Bugs on the mat in the form of a video projection, and the crowd was like, "What's going on here?" But this is a match that I think the crowd will really enjoy, and the promo work that these two put on last night, that's basically the school of shoot promos, diploma worthy.
Yep, I totally agree. I'm not as invested in the Randy AJ angle as you are. I guess my heart mostly goes towards the whole Kofi thing, which we'll touch on in a minute.
Oh, I'm big on Kofi too. Just as big as you are, if not equally as big. It's just for what happened last night. Mm-hmm. This is what
was a highlight for you.
This is what grabbed me, because we know what's going to happen with Kofi. We know that he's. I think we do. Like I feel like it's a given that he's gonna somehow he's gonna compete at Mania for the WWE title against Daniel Bryan. Whether or not next week is where he earns that opportunity, because I think there's still like 2 weeks left after next week before we're totally sure. But yeah, I feel like it's a given that he's going to face Bryan for the title, and I'll be super happy once he gets that pop of finally winning that title and holding it above his head. But for me, what happened last night between Randy and AJ, they just went after each other verbally, and I loved every minute of it. Like, we've never heard Dixie Carter's name mentioned before on SmackDown television, and that was like, they actually mentioned it. And that got me. And also, you got to think to yourself, we're going to get some sort of crazy RKO spot at some point in that match at Mania. And it's always fun to guess what new way is Randy Orton going to hit the RKO on someone.
You think it's going to come from the phenomenal forearm?
I think so. I that's definitely a possibility.
All right. My highlight of the evening has to be the way the New Day and Vince McMahon went back and forth. I love the fact that, I'm a very loyal person. I hold my friends close, almost a little bit too smothering. You know how I am. You call me the pit bull all the time, because once I feel like somebody crosses somebody I love, I'm the first one to jump into the fire for them. And I love seeing the way Big E and Xavier Woods are real quick to jump in Vince McMahon's face over Kofi. I find it, I know it's story, but, it hits home for me, because that's how I would be for you. You're my brother. That's how I would be for Hunter. You know what I mean? You've seen me before. You're not going to say anything disrespectful or treat my friends and my loved ones a certain type of way without having to deal with me first. So that's why I think I gravitated toward that segment so much, and why I'm especially cheering for Kofi. I left watching wrestling for a very long time, for a good 6-7 years. I remember this Kofi.
The boom, boom, boom one.
Yeah. And then when I come back and I see him without the Jamaican accent, I'm like, whoa, what happened? And it's all pancakes. And I start doing my research, and I'm like, yo, I love these dudes. They're great. And in all fairness, I understand what they're doing. They're building the ultimate underdog, because when if and when, I hope, Kofi raises that belt at Mania, it's going to feel that much more special.
But, go ahead.
But I just hope that they don't pull the rug out from underneath us.
And I can see what would make you afraid for that, because they have done that multiple times before. They have pulled the rug out from under us before. This is essentially their chance to do right what they did wrong with Triple H versus Booker T back in 2003. Yes. They had, like, when Triple H said, "People like you don't get to be champion. People like you don't get to be the head player of the company." And then for some reason they did not give Booker the win. When you go that low, you're supposed to give the face the win. And for some reason they did not do that. This is their chance to do it right this time. And you mentioned that they're building the ultimate underdog. It's very interesting that they're building the ultimate underdog character in Kofi, and his potential opponent at Mania is the guy who they made as the ultimate underdog several years ago in Daniel Bryan. He was the ultimate underdog at one point, and now he's the new Daniel Bryan, and new in both marketing and in reality. Like, this is a different Daniel Bryan than what we saw several years ago. And yeah, the main thing that concerns me is the gauntlet match that they've announced for next week. They got a lot of big guys, and granted, Kofi has beaten a lot of them, even in a gauntlet-style format. He beat Joe in a gauntlet-style format, something nobody expected him to do. But then at Fastlane, they had him get beaten up by both members of the Bar at once. Now, granted, thankfully, he only has to face one at a time this time. Mm-hmm. But there's still a little bit of concern in me because he's facing a lot of big guys who have proven themselves to be tough, and I'm also so that makes me nervous that they will pull the rug out from under us. But here's what I'm going to predict. I think Randy is going to be the final member of that gauntlet match because we understand the history between Kofi and Randy. And notice when Kofi had the first gauntlet match that AJ eliminated him from, who was the last person in that gauntlet? Who was the winner of that gauntlet? It was Randy. They kept Kofi and Randy apart. And also, Kofi did not really play a factor in Randy's elimination, I think. So with all the history behind them there, Kofi finishing the gauntlet by beating Randy Orton, the guy who halted his first push, if we're to believe what happened backstage. That would be very poetic, and it would make him getting that opportunity at Mania even more special. But yeah,
honestly, the way when Vince brought out the competitors for the gauntlet, I kind of looked at it and was like, all right, I can see AJ affecting the Randy segment. I can see R-Truth affecting the Joe segment. I can see the New Day affecting the Bar segment, and Kofi beating Rowan clean.
I can see that too, unless Vince bars people from ringside. Unless Vince bars people from ringside, then.
Yeah, but if you don't make it to the ring, you can't compete. You get caught backstage slipping. Hey, it happens. It's happened many a time. You know what I mean? Oh, for Joe come down the ramp backstage on the ground. We don't happen. You know what I mean? So, I could see something like that. Moving on, because we're trying to keep this under 45 minutes. The Shane McMahon Miz angle. What's your feeling about that? Is it one of those things that you can care less, or you see where they're going with it?
So when they first partnered up, I think I was one of the few people, at least in the circle of people we know, that was like, this is brilliant. This should not be as brilliant as it is, but it's brilliant. They've managed to make the most ridiculous pairing work here. And you heard me when we were discussing the Royal Rumble. I was cheering hard for Miz and Shane, and I never had really anything bad to say about their partnership or the angle that was taking place there. And so I kind of had a feeling that it might have come to this conclusion. I just wasn't totally certain, but having Miz as the face in this particular angle, it's interesting, but having George Mizanin in the picture justifies it. And Shane's promo, I think, also justifies it. Like feeling like I'm so underappreciated for the things I do, because he is one of the four people who runs the company. He is one of the four people who runs the company, and he was the nice guy out of the McMahon family. Like those first 2 years of SmackDown Live, he was the guy giving out opportunities to make things more interesting, put on good television. He was the guy who would jump coast to coast in Survivor Series matches because he wanted to be a true captain of the SmackDown Live brand and show, hey, I'm going into the foxhole with my soldiers. And there's an argument to be made that, at least on television, he never really got the respect for doing that he deserved, except maybe from AJ Styles after their Mania match, but that's a different story. So now here Shane is, he's had enough, and he's ready to look out for number one. And I feel like that's justified. Also, the way he manhandled the announcer those several times when he wouldn't introduce him as the best in the world correctly, it got me a little scared, because I'm like, First off, there's a lot of grabbing people who are non-wrestlers happening lately. Like Ronda Rousey's beating up referees, and now we've got Shane assaulting the people he pays. It's a scary work environment now, and so I'm just like, I feel like this is going to be a good match. Miz is one of those people who he's going to be wrestling until he's 70 because the style he uses allows him to do that, much like Jericho, much like Angle did for the longest time. Well, maybe not Angle. The man would still do moonsaults off the top rope every now and then. There's a reason why he's retiring at this age. But Miz plus Shane, I feel like they've proven that no matter what they do, it's always going to work.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's good. It's fun to see Shane go kind of back to being a bit of a dick. You know what I mean? I enjoyed good guy Shane, and I appreciate the fact that he took the blue brand and he made it a place where people get opportunity. He gives you matches that the fans want to see. You know, it almost feels like when Shane puts on a show, it's a subliminal FU to the Raw. Like, oh yeah, look, we're the better show. You keep calling yourself the flagship, but we're putting WWE on our back. You know what I mean? While your ratings plummet, ours rise. And I think he takes pride in building these stars that later Raw comes and poaches.
Exactly. Like Raw keeps thinking that, oh, SmackDown has the better stars. Let's poach them. And then what happens? They end up doing nothing with those stars. Like, look at Bobby Roode. He was doing stuff on SmackDown. Might not have been a lot, but he was doing stuff on SmackDown. What happens? Goes to Raw, doesn't do anything for the longest time, and they put him in, granted, a credible tag team with Chad Gable, who is also a star that made his star felt on SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
And, Dean Ambrose even. He was, like, he's had some flat singles pushes, I'll give you that. But his second run with the Intercontinental title, where he was feuding with Kevin Owens, if I'm remembering correctly, that was a SmackDown feud, I think. Actually, no, never mind. But when he won when he won the Intercontinental Championship back, and he was doing good things on SmackDown, and then he got transferred to Raw. And what happens? Drops the title to The Miz, and then I don't think they really did a lot of good things with him for a little bit. It wasn't until they brought the Shield back together that they finally did stuff with him again. So, like, again, we keep saying it all the time. SmackDown knows how to make use of their time. They know how to make use of their roster. And Raw, despite having those 3 hours, they don't know what to do with the time they have, with the people they have, because Vince has his mouthpiece in more people's ears down there than he does on the Blue Brand. The Blue Brand is more of a freeing environment. And NXT is even more of a freeing environment because it's all Triple H. So, like, the less control Vince McMahon has over a particular show, the more free you feel and the more capable you are of becoming a star with the limited time that you have.
This is true. We might have to do a quick little breakdown of just the Raw SmackDown branding in itself. Maybe that could be a future episode where, we dive deep into it, because it's kind of, I'll say this and then we'll move on. It's kind of funny that a show that has 2 hours gets more accomplished and feels more fulfilling and building than the quote unquote flagship show, who has all the big stars, quote unquote, and all the time in the world. And yet I sit there for 3 hours, and I ain't gonna lie, there's some times where I don't watch it live. I wait, so it's DVR'd, and then I fast forward through the commercials. So I don't have to torture myself, right? But I almost feel like I'm watching 3 hours of nothing, like air. Like I'm eating, like I'm starving, and I'm drinking a bottle of air.
I feel you. I feel you.
So, that's a discussion for another time, I guess. Um, where would you like to hit next? We
Okay,
have
so
the Becky Lynch Charlotte promo, or we can go into what I feel like is a travesty in the Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, Asuka situation.
So let's go to Fire and Desire, because I actually like where they're going with this. Now, granted, I kind of wasn't paying. There were some things going on that caused me to miss the first couple matches of Fastlane, and so I couldn't really pay attention to Asuka's match with Mandy Rose. I just remembered that Asuka kicked Mandy Rose in the face, and that's all I've really seen and mentally processed. But this match that we saw on Tuesday with Sonya Deville taking on Asuka. Now, first off, I love the idea of these two in the ring together, simply because like they both have those MMA backgrounds, and Sonya, she doesn't really get credited a lot for her MMA accomplishments because she didn't have that star power that Ronda Rousey had or that Ken Shamrock had when coming from the same business. But it's because of that reason that her wrestling skills overall are probably more hyped up, and because she gets a lot of praise from the internet wrestling crowd, because they like the work that she's put in, and it shows. And the storyline that they're doing of like Sonya messed up, leaving the ring apron open for Mandy Rose to trip on, and then Mandy doing the same thing supposedly by accident 2 nights later. Now I know what you're thinking. You're probably not liking the idea of these two splitting up, but the way they've set it up, with Mandy Rose being the heel that she is, and Sonya being more likable and babyface-ish, I feel like we can get a great rivalry out of these two with Asuka. I don't want to say Asuka would be the third wheel, but having the title in the picture there would make things that much more interesting. But yeah, we saw what they did with Mandy versus Naomi. They made a very interesting storyline that much more interesting, where you were invested in it. So if they're willing to just like two friends having a fight over a misunderstanding and it leads to one of the best rivalries of the year, I'm all for it.
I agree with you in the sense that I'm all about a good story and a good rivalry, and not only a rivalry, but if it produces a good match, that's all the more better. My opinion on the whole thing is it goes back to the tag team thing. You actually have two people outside of kayfabe who are actually really good best friends, right? Mandy and Sonya talking about. They have a natural chemistry. If worked into a tag team, they can be not only a good tag team, they can be a great tag team where you have someone who's beautiful and powerful in Mandy and someone who has actual really good wrestling credentials and really good crowd work in Sonya. You can make that work. Now, am I going to want to see that after you taint it with a storyline that's built over 2 misunderstandings, and you're going to sprinkle who I feel is the best female wrestler in the world, Asuka, as the third wheel? What are you going to do at Mania? Because you already have a women's triple threat. It's going to, what are we going to do at Mania with Asuka? Another triple threat somewhere in the lower card? By the time you get to your main event triple threat, it's going to be like, oh, we're just recycling the same match. Or do you have it that Sonya and Mandy the night before Mania or the week before Mania on the Go Home show wrestle to see who wrestles Asuka at Mania?
That I'd be fine with.
But that destroys the relationship. But like you said, if are we gonna get? Because I don't think either one of them. After Asuka lost last year at Mania, I don't see either one of them beating her at Mania, unless they really, really want to push Mandy Rose. Then I don't know. But
here's what I'll say. I'd rather have one of these two face Asuka because they've shown their in-ring work and they've shown that they can bring interesting things to the storylines moving forward if either one of them were to be the champion. I'd rather have that than have Lacey Evans, who somehow she's made just walking back and forth across the ramp work. It's like that repetitiveness of like you're witnessing something spectacular and like eventually you start believing it. But we haven't seen her in the ring yet. We haven't seen her in the ring yet on the main roster, with the exception of the Royal Rumble. And granted, when she got her feet wet in there, she got comfortable. But we haven't seen her in the ring since. So if she were to get the title shot against Asuka after having really done nothing but just walking up and down a ramp every week, it would feel even weirder.
I tell you one thing, I don't take too many things personal, and I know it's just a show, but worst case scenario, if Lacey Evans does get put into that spot and Lacey Evans gets put over at Mania after just walking up and down the ramp, I would be okay with it if it was Jane Schmo who had the title. But if it's Asuka, I don't know. I might have to turn off the remote, go back and go do something else, because it's a little slap in the face-ish. It's once again they pulling that rug off from under you. I don't know. I think with this whole Lacey Evans thing, if I'm a writer in WWE, I'm letting her walk up the ramp or walk down the ramp, and on her way back up, I'm having Nikki Cross smash her.
Ooh, I like that. The nastiest of all the women in her eyes, I would assume.
Yeah.
Beating the living crap out of her. Mm-hmm. I think that would be cool. That'd be a cool sport.
You could build a rivalry there. That way, Nikki gets the rub, right? Nikki finally gets, to be Nikki. Play with Nikki, right? And you get to show the Lacey character, she's nasty. And you get to build both stars up, right? You could even 50-50 book it if you want to, where one beats one beats the other. And then whoever gets the real big pop out of those two, then you put them in a angle with Asuka or whoever's the champion at that point.
I like that.
And the last thing of the evening, the man Becky Lynch. What do we got to say about Becky? She doesn't have the crutches anymore. Ronda put her over at Fastlane, and we still have shoehorn Charlotte floating around.
So I heard something on the dirt sheets that made me more okay with this triple threat, and that's because I think they realized that in the past couple of years, injuries have messed with their cards. Yeah. So they're thinking, okay, if we have this booked as a triple threat, then in the event that someone pulls out, we still have a quality main event either way. Be it Ronda versus Charlotte, Ronda versus Becky versus Charlotte. If someone gets hurt, we still have that. Because if you think about, look at what just happened with Tommaso Ciampa. Like, he tried to hold out until TakeOver, but unfortunately his neck just wouldn't allow him to hold out anymore. So he has to vacate the title, and we have no idea what's going to happen with the title, with TakeOver just being a few weeks away. And I think only they had maybe a week or two's worth of tapings before TakeOver to finish by the time Tommaso finally went in for surgery. So who's Johnny Gargano going to face for the title that's now vacant? They didn't have that planned out, as far as I know. But at least they've planned this out, so they're aware if something goes wrong, we still have two girls left. We still have two women left who are both quality wrestlers, and we can make a great main event out of that. And Becky and every time she's on the mic these days, she shows just how quick-witted she is. It's incredible. Like no hesitation from anything she says, like no stuttering or anything. Yeah, like I don't know how much she rehearsed that, or if she's just naturally that gifted when it comes to gap. But
honestly, I don't think it's rehearsed. Like I used to do music, and a lot of it is battle rapping and being able to come back quickly and rhyme, and that's something that you can practice when you write your lyrics out, but when you're just witty and quick with it, it's second nature. It comes from here, comes out the mouth. I just think she's naturally good at it.
Damn it, you just got me excited for something we're never going to see. I want to see Becky versus the Usos in a rap battle now. Please make that happen at some point. Please, because like if anyone watches Becky's social media, she's very good at puns. Like she's just naturally quick when it comes to puns, and now it's shown in her promo game as well. And Charlotte, she was also great on the mic as well. But like,
not taking anything away from Charlotte.
And like everything they said, by the way, in that segment was true. Like, because Charlotte, she has been the backbone of the women's division for the past 4 years. She has. Like she broke ground where Becky could not. Like she got to be in the first ever women's Hell in a Cell match. She got to be the first female main event of a pay-per-view, which just so happened to also be that Hell in a Cell match. And she had to be part of the first Money in the Bank match. Now, granted, so is Becky. But yeah, like these two are just so great together. And I love that Charlotte, I don't think she had referenced the Queen in a while, so hearing that again was great. And then Becky just finishing off that segment with like, what we didn't need a queen, and we definitely didn't need one 4 years ago. What we needed was the man, and now here we are in the main event of WrestleMania because of, you guessed it, the man. And just I loved it.
Well, Nico, we have touched on everything I think we needed to touch on.
Well, there were two things we forgot. One, I just want to say great work by the tag divisions of both brands for this week, especially when you think about Ricochet and Aleister Black. They were the stars of this week. Because they just 3 great matches 3 days in a row against all members of both rosters. And by the way, when I saw Aleister Black and Shinsuke Nakamura in the ring together in Muay Thai stances, just like a pancrase fight of old, I got goosebumps, and I was like, oh no, they're going to tag out before we actually get to see anything cool happen. But just the little tease of that got me excited. So WWE, keep Shinsuke Nakamura happy so we can actually get that match at some point down the road. But great work by the tag divisions of both brands. And also, Alexa Bliss is the host of WrestleMania.
You got to do something with her.
And it helps because she's still very over with the crowd.
Yes, she is.
And unfortunately, thankfully she's not injured. It's just that they don't really know what to do with her right now. And putting her in a hosting position is a good thing because it gives her something to do. It capitalizes on the momentum she still has, despite not having anything to do in terms of in-ring work. What I'm uncertain about is when they did that with The Rock and when they did that with the New Day, both of those people were really good at marketing themselves outside of wrestling. Like The Rock, he's a big-time movie star. Mm-hmm. The New Day, they had bootios, they had T-shirts. They were really good at up, up, down, down. They were really good at marketing themselves in terms of a non-wrestling environment. Mm-hmm. Alexa Bliss, she got some more fans, I think, in terms of Total Divas. But outside of that, what has she really done to increase her stardom outside of the wrestling world? That's the question. But I feel like with Ronda Rousey being in the main event, that's going to draw in the casual fans that those casual fans will see Alexa Bliss hosting, and that may increase her star power and as big as The Rock and the New Day did with those casuals in just a reverse way.
I agree. Well, my brother, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being my co-host on my first Raw SmackDown Breakdown here on Combat Wrestling Network.
My pleasure.
Where can the people find you?
It was my pleasure to be here for the first episode of the Raw and SmackDown Breakdown. And to whoever is co-host next week, if it's not me, good luck.
Good luck dealing with Adonis, right? I've been trying to do it for the last 6 months.
But in terms of where you can find me, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, at Nico Suave Regoli. That's NICOSUAVE REGOLI. You can find me over on Dedicated to Art. Is the name of the YouTube channel. Other social media is at D2A channel. I do Star Wars Resistance recaps and the Who Cares Anyway podcast and Schmodown reactions with Case Cornelisa and Christopher Doman. So check those out when they are uploaded. You can also find me over on Multiplex Entertainment. That's the name of the Facebook group and the YouTube channel. The Twitter is at MultiplexYT. The Instagram is Multiplex Entertainment Network. The TPO is just Multiplex. Buy our awesome shirts. Tonight, Zadia Smith and I have another edition of Crisis on Earthplex where we cover everything that happened in the Arrowverse and then touch on some of the other stuff that happened in the world of comic books and fandom and geekdom and whatnot. And finally, right here at Combat Wrestling Trivia, that's the name of the Facebook group. The YouTube channel is Combat Wrestling Network. The Twitter, which is still very poorly made, but we have a Twitter, so that's what counts. It is at Combat Wrestling without a G, and then the number 2. So follow all those social medias. We'll get you a match. Recently, I posted another call to arms for the middleweight division. If you want a match this Saturday night, comment on that thread, and we'll get you booked.
Awesome. My name is Adonis Nazario. You can find me at Facebook on at Adonis Nazario. You could also find me here now hosting on Combat Wrestling Network. He gave you all the Twitter and Facebook handles. You could also find me on Full Metal and Multiplex answering questions and random geek stuff. And in the next couple of weeks, I promise, I'm working on getting a format, and my plan is to have a nice built page where everything MMA. It will be called 12 to 6 Elbow. If you're not familiar with 12 to 6 Elbow, it's the illegal strike this way. And the reason why I named it that is because not everything I do is under par. So thank you for joining us. Nico, my brother, I love you. Send love to the mom. Everybody here at Combat Wrestling Network. We'll see you next week, brother. Take us out.
See you next for Combat.
Peace.
We still need a catchphrase. But I'll figure
we're
something
working
out.
on it. We're working on it.
Yep.